$900? Man, these tariffs are crazy. What is going on, my beautiful LARPers and LARPits? If you're like me and you were trying to buy a camera and it doubled in price like a couple days ago because of these freaking tariffs that are going on, and now you don't want to buy it because you knew the price was a lot cheaper a couple days ago, and now you're kind of annoyed about this whole thing going on, go ahead and drop a comment down below on maybe what you were trying to buy before these tariffs were going through. But anyways, the Canik MC9 Prime. And in this video, I'm going to compare it to the Canik MC9LS, which is the long slide version. And then there's the Canik MC9, which is the original one that first came out. And then I'm just gonna throw in the Canik MC9L, I think, which is essentially this slide on this frame. There's no reason for me to, I don't have it, but there's no reason for me to not include it in this. But before I get into all of that, what is my relationship with Canik themselves? They have sent me that MC9 and the MC9LS here for review. They have sent me a couple other Caniks in the past for review as well. So there's no secret here that the Canik does send me out firearms for review. I just want to get that out of the way. They do not pay me for these reviews, and they do not even see these reviews before I even put them out. I go ahead and post them up, and you see them at the same time that they would essentially see them when the video comes out. But first, as always, with any Canik review that I'm doing, I always have to show off the box. This is one of the things that made me fall in love with Caniks in general, is how much effort they put into the presentation of what you're getting in the box. So right here, you can see that it says Prime, so that way you don't forget which Canik box you're putting it into. But you're getting that Canik Prime. Nice. I guess you can fly with this thing too. It's a nice, like, it's like a Pelican style hard covered case here. I'm not a box expert, but you're getting the gun, you're getting a holster, inside the waistband holster, which you could also put outside the waistband if you needed to, but I used it in the videos that I showed you. It was mostly inside the waistband stuff. Really nice holster, by the way. I think this is a collaboration between G-Code and Canik themselves. And you're getting one extra magazine, mag loader, your little lock here. You got your little, what is that? The toolkit there. I think that is probably one of the coolest features too when it comes down to Caniks. You're getting, every one of the Caniks come with this little gun-shaped toolkit. All the pieces and parts are in there. 2 back straps, and then underneath here, if I can take it out, you're getting that paddle for the outside the waistband, and then like a cleaning kit and a little tool there as well. Now let's go over the major difference that you're going to see on this Prime here compared to the other two MC9s right here. You're going to notice that the slide is basically a completely different slide in the way it looks. You have a lot more serrations on there. You got serrations basically all the way across the board on this slide. So very aggressive serrations in the front here and in the back. And it also goes around through the optic plate here. And you also get serrations in the barrel. Serrations or milling. I think it's better to call it milling, right? So the milling goes all the way across the board on this, and you also have some cutouts at the front here, and I'll explain a couple of different reasonings behind this. So you're going to see that that closely resembles the Canik rivals, right? So let me bring out a Canik rival for you. You can see that the rival here has that C cut out there, and then you also see that on the Canik Prime here. So I really like that they're kind of keeping the same, I guess, design flow between the rival and the Prime. They make it look very, very aggressive and mean looking, but not to the point where it's kind of like pointless to have these serrations on there. You can see that the rival here has deeper serrations than the Prime, but I would not want the rival serrations on this one, just because For a concealed carry gun, I want a lot more sleeker of a gun to stick in my pants essentially than a gun that's a little bit more aggressive like this one here. But it is still very grippy. The serrations do help out with your hands are muddy, dirty, sweaty, rainy. I deal with a lot of rain out here lately, and when it rains, it definitely helps out when I want to do a press check or rack or do something like that. Now to move on to one of the cool features that are on the Prime is the barrel is ported now. 3 ports right at the top there, and you also get some fluting that's inside the barrel itself. You can probably see that. It's kind of like flat there. It's like cut 4 times to flute it out. But anyways, that barrel that's ported now is also cut out in the slide itself, so the gases can escape through that slide. As far as porting goes, how does it feel in the, I guess, the felt recoil compared to a non-ported gun? So when it comes to this Canik MC9 Prime, little guns are snappy regardless. A gun this small or a gun this small compared to a gun that is this big is always going to be a lot snappier. But adding ports to it, you'd kind of think, hey, that's going to help me out a tremendous amount, but it really doesn't. And let me emphasize on that when it comes down to reducing the recoil in a gun. Ports are cool. You can definitely feel it a tiny bit, but it's not something where I would kind of say, hey, that's the end all and you should depend on the gun that has ports to reduce the recoil rather than you focusing on proper fundamentals. Proper fundamentals, I feel, are going to be the greatest factor in helping you reduce recoil. So having a proper grip, proper tension in that grip, and being able to keep that muzzle flip or muzzle climb to a minimum. Now, when you're comparing this Canik Mete Prime ported to a bigger rival here, it's definitely not as soft shooting as the rival. But when you're comparing it to, say, the other MC9s, you could definitely feel a difference between this one here because of the barrel. The barrel is longer, the slide is longer, the frame is longer, so you're able to get a little bit more material at the end of that barrel, and the weight from that material definitely helps out with that recoil mitigation, and also that compensator in conjunction with that longer slide and barrel is going to help out a tiny bit more. Now when you're comparing it to the MC9LS, this is where you're kind of splitting hairs here. So the same exact slide and barrel length there, but as far as the recoil goes, you can only sense a tiny bit, I guess, softer recoiling from this one compared to this one. So when I was shooting both of these, it felt like they were kind of neck and neck. I could definitely feel a tiny bit less recoil when it came down to this one here, but not by much. It wasn't to the point where it's like, oh man, this thing is a game changer when it comes to recoil reduction. The MC9LS, what this does for its size is very, very manageable. I would rather have the longer slide versions than the short ones. The short ones I just don't like. Little guns like this are just too snappy for me, but having a little bit more meat on that slide definitely helps out with recoil reduction. But enough about the ports, or actually one thing about the ports that I forgot. You got the Prime logo on the inside of that port cutout there. So a lot of cutouts on this slide to lighten up that slide a little bit. Now moving on to the sights, you got a 3-dot tritium insert night sight set up here, and then you also got a orange front sight there. I don't know if you can see it, but a orange front sight, that's pretty easy to pick up. You also have the same optics cut as the other MC9s, which is the RMSC footprint, and this one here does have serrations that are cut onto the optic plate itself. It's just a little bit better, cooler design than the other two. Now let's move on to the frame of the Prime here. Now you're going to see a good amount of similarities between this one and the LS and L, but the biggest difference you're going to see between this and the original Prime is the size for one, and then if you can see, the beaver tails are a little bit different shape. You can see that this one is a little bit fatter and it doesn't have like a beaver tail sticking out at the back. On the Prime here, it's a little bit more cut up, so that way you could bring your grip up higher, and then it has a little tiny beaver tail sticking out right here, so that way you don't put it too high where you get slide bite. This one I never really had a slide bite issue, but it's just cool to see that they did do that there. So just in case you kind of missed that grip, you're not going to accidentally get slide bite. But comparing the Prime to the MC9LS and MC9L, which the L essentially is just a shorter slide version of this same frame here, you're going to see a good amount of differences. So first one is going to be the texturing. The texturing is a lot more aggressive than the original Prime and not the Prime, the original LS and the L. You can feel a lot more grippier texture on the front and the back of this thing, as well as the side panels. They're a little bit smooth, which would be good. So if you're concealed carrying it, that's not gonna rub against your skin there and chafe it. But the front and the back of it feel very similar to the Canik Terran Tactical Canik one, where the grip texture is really aggressive on that too, but not too aggressive where it's gonna completely destroy your hands and basically be DNA collectors the whole time. The Canik MC9LS grip texture is okay, but is kind of mediocre comparing it to the Prime here. Now, you're gonna see on the texturing, they changed it up as well as far as where the texturing is. You can see on here, on the LS and L, you're going to not have texturing in this portion, which I think that is a very, very, very important spot to have texturing. And this one, not sure why they didn't do it, but on the Prime, they fixed it. You can see that the texturing goes all the way up close to that slide release there. And you're also going to notice that they added texturing right here that is larger, comparing it to the MC9LS. So you can see you have a longer pad here compared to the shorter pad here, which this one here is more aggressive than the LS here. But on the LS here, again, it's a very good shooting gun. I feel like that texturing does have a lot to do with me trying to mitigate more of that recoil. Like I said before, I think grip and proper fundamentals play a bigger part than actually having ports on a gun. But if you don't have any texturing here and nothing to grip onto, it's going to slide around a little bit more, which is going to make it a little bit harder to force that gun down or to mitigate that recoil a little bit better. I do really appreciate that the Canik MC9 Prime put some up there, because I feel like this is a solid grip that I can get on here. So when I have my normal grip here, I feel that texture digging into my palm of my hand, and also this little pad in the front. I can go ahead and force my thumb into that and keep that muzzle flip down. Also, if you see at the front of the trigger guards there, the MC9 Prime has that same texturing right here as you do around the whole grip. And on the MC9LS and MC9L, you're only going to see those like horizontal lines there. So kudos to Canik for paying attention to that and adding that to this one here. I hope that they keep that same texturing and that same design through the full line of Caniks coming in the future. You get the same exact double undercut here on the frame, the same exact trigger guard design, so the same holsters are going to fit on each of these, and also the frame itself feels exactly the same. The beveling on the actual, oh, that makes like a little heart there, that's pretty cool, but the beveling on the beaver tail section here is essentially the same. I don't really see a difference between the two. So frames are basically identical aside from that grip texture, and the last thing here is the 1913 accessory rail section is all the way to the front. You guys that have seen my reviews on guns that are kind of like recessed right here with the 1913 rail, I really don't care for, but when you get a full dust cover like this one here, it tickles my OCD fancy right here. Like, I just like that flush fitting look on guns. So that to me is a pretty big feature. Definitely helps out with putting different lights or lasers on there that are different shapes and sizes. Now moving on, you get these same little takedown buttons here that are on the side of the gun, these little squares that help you take down the gun. But the slide release is a little different on these. So if you're looking at this here and comparing it to the LS or the L, you can see that the cut down here is different. It's not as smooth as this, and it's also, the Prime is more extended. Basically, it's popping out more than the LS here or the L. So let me do this without flagging myself. Oh yeah, that's a little bit better. As you can see right there, the material on the Prime here is protruding a lot more than the LS or the L or the other MC9, which makes it a little bit easier to do reloads when you have that slide locked back on you. You can go ahead and hit that slide release a little bit faster than the LS here. I don't know if I had too much of an issue with the LS, but it does feel a little bit slipperier than the MC9 here Prime. Now moving on, you're going to see on the mag releases a different change in the texturing there, or the serrations there. You can see that these are vertical up and down compared to the horizontal ones on the LS. I much rather prefer the vertical ones, just because when you are pushing a magazine release, I'm not hitting it down like this. I'm pushing it like forward. I'm like breaking my grip like this, and I'm pushing that forward, like button forward and then down. Like I'm going like this when I'm pushing it. So it definitely helps out gripping that with my thumb and pushing it forward and down. It doesn't slide like I do on the MC9LS here. You can see that the serrations go this way, so if I were to push it forward, my thumb would just slide across that button there and hit that. Now, is that something where I'm kind of like, ah man, the LS, it sucks, I can't release the magazine? No, I can still release that magazine pretty well. It just definitely makes it a little bit more secure to hit that button faster and easier, or if I do have a, I guess, wet thumb for whatever reason. Moving on, the Canik Prime also comes with an aluminum magwell, which is a very nice touch to have on this gun here. I had zero issues with reloads. I didn't have a whole lot of issues with the LS here, but it does feel better to have a little bit wider magwell, so that way I don't have to pay attention so much when I'm reloading. I can kind of just glance at that magwell before I reload, as opposed to this one here. I have to pay attention a little bit more to reload that magazine. You can see there I fumbled a little bit, and you kind of, if you were to reload a lot and fumble it, you'll destroy all that plastic down there. So it's nice having something that I can essentially destroy at the bottom of this thing and just replace it if it gets too worn out. Now last but not least, the triggers. This is going to be, to me, probably the most important upgrade, just because the trigger is now the aluminum trigger that you get on the other competition versions here, which is the Rival or the Rival Steel, or I don't know if there's another one out there. But anyways, the same trigger that you get on the Rivals are now coming on the Prime, and the Prime trigger is, I feel, a hell of a lot better than the other two here. So the MC9LS, the MC9L, and the MC9 all use this same curved plastic trigger. Caniks have amazing triggers already regardless, but having that flat face, well, let me show you the Prime here, or the LS here. Very, very nice pull there. Beautiful reset. And a short pull. On the Prime here, you got that nice flat face. You're there at the wall. Pull. Reset. Pull. That to me is the cherry on top. But that pretty much does it, comparing all the features on this Prime here and the original MC9. You're going to see a ton different between these two here, and you're going to see a good amount of differences between the LS or the L comparing it to this one. The frames are essentially the same length and feel, other than the texturing and the front end of that dust cover is longer on the Prime. And then you're also getting all the controls on here that are different design as well. Trigger being one of the best upgrades, I think, comparing this to the LS. And you can't forget about that aggressive, badass looking slide. I mean, look at that compared to the plain Jane. But maybe you guys like a little bit more of a plain looking gun like this MC9 Prime or this MC9LS, comparing it to this crazy looking Prime here. But I, for one, like a cool, crazy looking gun. Now, are the parts interchangeable? Yes, they are interchangeable. I can put that magwell onto this guy here. You can see it even has a little screw down there, and I could also swap the slide. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for you, so that way you can see how this slide looks on this one and this slide looks on this one here. All right, so you can see here the Prime slide on the LS frame and the LS slide on the Prime frame. Yeah, I'm getting confused. But yeah, parts compatibility, you can completely swap all the parts over to the other one. Again, change the magwells. The magazines are across all the Canics across the board. You can put any Canik magazines in these except for the little MC9 here. You cannot put that magazine into these ones. You just gotta put these bigger ones into this guy here. But yeah, it looks pretty cool with that full dust cover on the end of that LS slide. And then, I don't know, how do you guys like the look of this two-tone with the shorter dust cover there with the Prime slide? Now, it's pretty awesome that the Canik Prime is being made in the US and the parts compatibility is the same between all the Turkish counterparts, because now that these tariffs are going on, who knows what's going to be more expensive or what's going to be staying the same price. But I really hope that this is US made now, that it's still going to be the Canik pricing that you usually get, you know? And it also probably makes you guys feel a little bit better that do have the Turkish Canics and maybe want to buy extra spare parts for them. Now that Canik is doing things in the US, we'll be able to keep those prices down. Hopefully. I don't know what the tariffs are going to affect, but hopefully Canik will be able to keep that same price point on all their parts and all their guns from here on out. Now, I did go out and shoot 500 rounds for my first initial tests. I had 0 malfunctions within that 500 rounds. It seems like the quality is still Canik quality. You don't see a huge change up between the Turkish made one and the US made one here. I feel like it's pretty much exactly the same. You wouldn't even know that this one was made in the US comparing it to all the other Canics as far as quality goes. Now, I do want to point out 2 downsides to the Prime here, or essentially any gun that has ports on the front of the barrel here that are cut into the slide and the barrel. First one is going to be carbon buildup. You're going to get a lot more carbon buildup on this one here in different places that you're not used to compared to a standard non-ported gun. Here, within my 500 rounds of testing, I was already starting to get some carbon buildup on the orange little dot right there. It's still pretty bright, but I think I wiped it off a little bit. But you can, I don't know if you can see that close, but anyways, you can see some carbon building up on that orange. I feel like maybe after 1,000 rounds or 1,500 rounds and not cleaning it, it's going to get build up pretty good there. And if I don't clean it off, I'm not going to be able to see that orange anymore. And if I don't take care of it after a while, it'll probably start to have that carbon crust, if you know what I'm talking about, the crustiness of the carbon when it starts to dry up on there and build up a lot more. So that's one downside, more carbon buildup at the front end of your muzzle there. 2 is going to be shooting from retention. So when you're using this as a concealed carry, right, and say you're going to shoot a dummy or something super close up and you kind of have the gun here, the gases that are traveling from that port up to your face are pretty uncomfortable. So when you're shooting like this, you're going to get gases shooting up under your eyewear, and then you're going to get residue from the powder that you're shooting on those rounds shooting up into your face as well. Basically, unburnt powder particles are going to be shooting up. Doesn't make it uncomfortable to the point where you're like, oh man, this is dangerous. It just makes it uncomfortable where you're like, hey, I'm not used to feeling these gases slap me in my face. Only time I'm really used to that is when I'm like sitting in bed with my wife and she never mind. But those are the 2 downsides to this and in general every other ported gun out there. It does feel better in the hands when you're shooting it, comparing it to the MC9 and MC9LS. Slightly better than the LS, but a lot more to me than the MC9 here. Now that pretty much does it for the initial review of the Prime, and hopefully I answered all your questions on all the differences between the LS and the L and the normal MC9. But do I think this Prime is a better option than the LS, the L, or the normal? I think so. I think the feature set that you're getting on this is a hell of a lot better than this one here. Not saying that this is a bad gun. I'm not saying that whatsoever. This is still an amazing gun. If you have this, I still would not get rid of this. But do I think the extra, I guess this is 500 bucks and this is like 600 and something bucks. If you're trying to decide between these two, I think paying an extra 100 and something bucks for the Prime is a great move. Comparing these two, I think this one blows this one out of the water as far as the features that you're getting on here. You're getting great serrations, better texturing and more portions, trigger, magwell, all that stuff on this guy here, comparing it to the LS, the L, or the MC9. I see too many people getting wrapped up about the ports. It has ports, so it's got to be better. I don't think that's what's making this gun better than the other three. I think all the other features that I pointed out are making it a hell of a lot better than the other three. And the ports are just a bonus. But what do you guys think about the Prime? Do you think it's worth it? Do you think that it's kind of whatever, you don't really care about the features and you're going to stick with your other guns? Or do you see these two and don't want anything that fancy and you're like, hey, I want a less fancy gun, and would go with the LS or the MC9 or the L. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you all. I love you all. Catch you in the next one.